get this recorded for future folks who want to view it. Thank you all so much for coming today, for joining us. I know close to the holidays, it's rough and we're all kind of zoomed out sometimes. So thank you all for coming. I want to introduce Ashley Hunter. I love working with Ashley. I've been working with her pretty much since I started. She was one of the first folks I met here in Nashville and started working with. So I'm super excited. Ashley is from FiftyForward's Victory Over Crime program. She is the director. She's also a licensed master level social worker. She has devoted her career to advocating for the well-being of the older adult population. And with the Victory Over Crime program, she works to provide assistance to adults that are 50 and over who have been affected by crime. Ashley is the current chair of the Middle Tennessee Elder Watch Committee, a Tennessee Vulnerable Adult Coalition affiliated group that fosters collaboration among service providers that work to combat elder abuse. She received her MSW at the University of Tennessee, where her primary focus of study was healthcare and gerontology. And before coming to FiftyForward, Ashley was a medical social worker at NHC Place, Cool Springs. So without anything else, Ashley, I'm gonna give the floor to you.
Thank you, Chloe. I'm so excited to give our elder abuse presentation. We recently revamped it with a lot of great information for service providers, so I'm super happy to share that with all of you guys. So if anybody is unfamiliar with what FiftyForward is, FiftyForward is a nonprofit that's here in Middle Tennessee. We have 7 lifelong learning centers in Middle Tennessee. We call them lifelong learning centers, but I think they're more widely recognized as senior centers. We have those in Davidson and Williamson County. And we also have supportive care services, which is what my program falls under, Victory Over Crime, where we provide direct services and case management services to older adults. So I can go ahead and get into it. I can make there we go. Okay, so a lot of information that we took to put this presentation together came from our own experiences, from working in the field, but we also used a lot of information from a recent project that the National Center on Elder Abuse did with the Frameworks Institute. So the Frameworks Institute is a nonprofit that does research and analysis on different topics to help develop the most appropriate communication strategy for different public issues. So they work together to talk about the best communication strategy on how to talk about elder abuse. So one of the big takeaways that we had from that project was they used the metaphor of thinking of our society as a building. So if we are thinking of our society as a structure, it's a helpful way for us to kind of understand how we need many elements in that structure, like strong foundation and support systems or support beams, to make sure people of all ages are safe and supportive. So I'm going to be referring back to that metaphor throughout the presentation. It just kind of helps keep with the theme of understanding all the societal issues that go into cases of elder abuse. Okay, so through the presentation, I'm going to give you guys some more information on the scope of the issue of elder abuse specifically and learn how we can all identify common presentations. I'm going to go over some intervention and reporting information along with a little more information about our program specifically. I'm going to go over some ways that we can all work towards prevention towards the end, so we'll finish it out that way. So as kind of an icebreaker, in the next couple slides I have a couple true or false questions, and if you guys want to put your answers in the chat of what you might think the answers are. So for our first question, we have neglect is a type of elder abuse. Is this fact or fiction if people want to share in the chat what they think. And I'll give people just a second or two. Yes, so most people are saying fact. And this is interesting because one of the key findings from that frameworks project was that the general public had a hard time of really understanding what neglect is and how it relates specifically to the topic of elder abuse. And it's probably one of the more common forms of elder abuse that we see. So I'm going to kind of delve into the issue of neglect a little bit later on in our presentation. Okay, here's our next question. So most elder abuse happens at home. Would this be fact or fiction? If you want to put your answer in the chat. So most people are saying fact, which is great. So it's actually a pretty big common misconception that most elder abuse cases happen in institutional settings like nursing homes, but they actually happen within the home, and most of the time, unfortunately, perpetrators are family members or somebody who has a close intimate relationship with that older adult. Okay, and then for our last question, the number of reports of elder abuse is consistent with actual cases. So if we want to put our chat answers. Well, great. You guys are awesome. I see a lot of fiction. So it is true. Well, it is fiction, but the truth is that most elder abuse cases actually do go unreported. And there's lots of different reasons why that tends to be. And I'm going to hit on that a little bit later in our presentation as well. Okay. Well, great, guys. Okay. So when we're talking about elder abuse, I think that it's important to kind of take a step back first and address working with older adults in a more general sense. So I think that everybody kind of understands that there can be some stereotypes about working with older adults and about that population being a vulnerable or maybe a demanding population to work with. But I guess in terms, if we're looking to identify strengths, I want to highlight some of the more rewarding aspects of working with older adults. So I have worked with older adults specifically for about 8 or 9 years now. And something that I have found very rewarding with working with this population is I have always thought that it has been very special to see that role reversal that happens in later life. So older adults spend their lives kind of championing and helping us. And now once they are older, then we have the privilege and responsibility to be able to support them as they age. And I've always just find it very interesting to hear about people's histories and things that they have learned throughout a lifetime. So I just kind of wanted to hone in on things that I found to be very special about working with older adults to hopefully inspire, other service providers in taking a special interest in this population. So again, before getting into elder abuse numbers specifically, I think that it is no surprise to anybody, and this has been something that has widely been talked about, but I think everybody knows that the baby boomer generation is aging. So statistics show that every day about 10,000 people across the country are turning 65. And unfortunately, with so many people all at once aging into older adulthood, there is a larger opportunity for elder abuse to occur. And because of that, I just want to say that by making the point that I think that even if it's not your specialty to work with older adults specifically, it's vital for all service providers to know and understand some of the topics surrounding elder abuse so they have the information that they need to provide best interventions and prevention strategies as possible. Okay, so now finally shifting into elder abuse specifically, I want to go over a couple statistics, and I don't want any of these numbers to like pigeonhole anyone's view of elder abuse, and certainly every case can be different and look a little bit differently, but these are just general numbers, so as a whole. So there are 5 million elder abuse victims each year, and the numbers are unfortunately rising. 60% of elder abuse cases, the perpetrator is a family member, so that's more common than not. An additional risk factor can be if that older adult has any cognitive deficits, so signs of dementia or confusion. 60% of elder abuse cases do show signs of some cognitive issues. 2 out of 3 victims are women. And this last statistic probably sticks with me more than any other one, especially in my work, that elder abuse increases the risk of early death by 300%. So I just think that goes to show that older adults being in an abusive situation can really disrupt their equilibrium so much so that it can be lethal, even if it's just, you know, I mean, not just, but emotional abuse or neglect or something like that. Okay, so broadening our lens on elder abuse, I think as service providers, we kind of have like a general idea of what elder abuse can be, with being the mistreatment or harming of any older person. But what I want to kind of pinpoint here is that the topic of elder abuse is so much more complex than that. There are so many societal factors to consider, and it's not always as simple as somebody who's labeled the victim, like the innocent person, or the perpetrator who might be the guilty person. It's important to understand all the different societal factors that can contribute to the mistreatment of older adults. So probably the first thing that I would think of would be the lack of support services for older adults in general. It's more likely for older adults to become more isolated as they age due to those lack of services, and isolation can lead to older adults being more open to being mistreated, abused, or taken advantage of. And unfortunately, we have ageism, so common stereotypes about older adults that keep them segregated from the rest of the community. And this same idea leads into the whole aspect of isolation that I mentioned just a second ago. And then something that I've, noticed a lot in our work too is just generally there's a lack of awareness and education about elder abuse. And the public isn't always aware of common red flags or warning signs. And I can say in our work, we interact with service providers all the time who don't really know how to make a report to Adult Protective Services. I'm thinking specifically people who would be real safety net professions like nurses or bankers or financial institutions. So just all of those societal factors go into play in one older adult being abused or neglected.
Hey, Ashley, you have a question. Do you want to wait till the end, or you want to?
I can answer it now.
Okay. Do you feel that rising numbers are indicative of increased reporting or increased incidents?
So I feel like increased incidents, because I feel like more is happening, but it's not being reported just because a lot of people don't know. So I feel like that's why that awareness piece is so important. And I really feel, especially here recently, that it's getting better. I don't know if anybody knows this, but the Tennessee Comptroller's Office recently released a report about financial exploitation in Tennessee and making recommendations on how we can work to improve some of the resources that are already out there, specifically with increasing funding for adult protective services to pay for more staff and support people, and expanding the criteria of cases that APS can get involved with. So especially now, it's just a really weird time with COVID too. I feel like the pandemic has left so many people in a state of economic uncertainty that unfortunately older adults have become more of an easy target to be exploited. I hope that answered your question. I kind of babbled a little bit.
That totally answers it. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so so shifting into the types of abuse, I think a lot of you probably understand abuse in its most basic forms, but I want to go over how they relate specifically to elder abuse. So in terms of physical abuse, I think that everybody pretty much understands, you know, any kind of hitting, slapping, punching, any kind of physical injury. But something that's not everyone always thinks of as an example of physical abuse could be somebody in a caregiver role over sedating that older adult through the use of medication. So this form of abuse is something that we might see in a nursing home setting or from like an overtaxed caregiver in the home. Then we have emotional abuse, so any kind of, you know, verbal insults, threats, intimidation, sexual abuse, very clear cut, any kind of unwanted sexual activity of any kind. But the two forms of abuse that I really want to hone in on here are the neglect and the financial exploitation. So basically neglect can be seen as not providing that older adult with their basic needs. So this could be nutrition, medication, adaptive equipment like wheelchairs or walkers, anything that they might need to thrive. But it can also be even if somebody in that caregiver role isn't paying bills on time or completing other caregiver duties that they should be. For example, and if an older adult has limited physical function and is unable to turn and position themselves, it's pretty common for those older adults to develop bed sores or pressure ulcers. And if those are not cared for very carefully and properly, then they can become lethal very quickly. So that could be a common form, unfortunately. And then I kind of touched on this a second ago when I was talking about the financial exploitation. But right now there is such an increase in older adults being financially exploited. Older adults are more likely to be financially exploited because they are more likely to have access to funds or assets that they've saved a lifetime for. They might have a regular income from something like disability or Social Security. And we see a lot of family members or people who are in that caregiver role that are getting older adults to add them to their bank accounts and then or add them as a power of attorney, and then they just drain that older adult financially, which can be obviously put that older adult in a really difficult situation. So, and of course, and this is a whole nother presentation that we could go on for hours about, there are scams that are targeting older adults where people are pretending to be government officials from the Social Security office or the IRS, telling them that they owe money and back taxes or they were overpaid in Social Security payments, and if they don't pay it back right now, then there'll be a warrant out for their arrest. I mean, there's so many scams that target older adults. And something that we've been seeing a lot of recently are older adults getting involved in romance scams. So scammers are hanging out on dating websites targeting older adults, and they're trying to engage in a relationship with them very quickly over the internet, and just take advantage of them that way and say that they need money to, I need plane tickets so I can come and visit you so we can be together, which can be a very, difficult situation because it not only takes advantage of that older adult financially, but also emotionally. So that can be very, very hard on some of the clients that we serve. So just touching on those types of abuse and how it relates specifically to elder abuse. Okay, so red flags of abuse, some key things to look for. Unusual changes in behavior or sleep patterns. Changes in cognition can be a big one. There also might be some medical reasons that there might be a change in cognition, but it can also be a clear indicator for abuse. The older adult is becoming more isolated from their normal social circles or normal routines, having little interest or pleasure in doing things. I can give an example of one client that we were helping in our program. We initially got involved with a woman who had been taken advantage of by an imposter scam. So she gave money to a scammer over the phone. She thought she was paying her NES bill, but she ended up giving the scammer her bank account information. But as we were working with her, we noticed that she didn't always have a lot of food in the house. So we kind of worked with her through, how do you get your groceries? Who helps you with that? Where do you go? What do you do? And she said that she was giving her neighbor $100 a week to go and, fill her fridge full of groceries. And come to find out, the neighbor was kind of pocketing a lot of that money for herself, and that was very apparent because there wasn't ever a lot of groceries in the house. So that could be, an indicator too, if there is an over-involved family member or neighbor that kind of seems off or a little funny. Just an example of that. We also have financial signs. So if there are unusual changes in bank accounts or spending behavior, if all of a sudden on their bank statements it shows that they're spending hundreds of dollars at Nordstrom, and that person never, really gets over to that side of town or has been at Nordstrom ever in their lives, that's obviously a red flag. And like I mentioned earlier, if there are all of a sudden people who have a special interest in that older adult and they haven't really been involved before, that can be a red flag. And of course, we have physical signs. So any type of physical injury that cannot be easily explained or seems fishy. If that person looks disheveled, that can be a clear indicator too. One thing that I kind of look at sometimes under their fingernails, if their fingernails are being, properly cared for, groomed, cut. And like I mentioned earlier, the whole issue with bed sores or pressure ulcers and older adults not being properly turned and positioned can be a big one. Okay. So who is at higher risk to experience elder abuse? So people who are physically disabled tend to be at a bit of a higher risk for elder abuse. They have a higher likelihood to rely on others who are in that caregiver role to meet their needs. So that just creates a bigger opportunity for, them to be dependent on others who might take advantage of them. Again, people who are in a little more poor health and need a little more assistance from others. Older adults who have cognitive impairments, unfortunately, they tend to be an easy target because perpetrators think that they might not be as easily and quickly believed as somebody who is completely alert and oriented, and also people with lower incomes or socioeconomic status. So who tends to be more likely to commit elder abuse? So throughout the presentation, I've hit on the fact that family members are more likely to commit elder abuse. Unfortunately, we see a lot of trends of those committing the abuse to have a substance abuse issue or other mental health disorder that maybe is not being treated properly. Not all the time, but it is kind of a common theme. A lot of times we see family members financially exploiting older adults to feed their addiction, or if they are just historically very not good with money, we see a lot of that going on. But not just family members. I can't think a little bit not as likely, but still likely would be acquaintances. So I know I told the story earlier about the overly invested neighbor who was helping out as much as she could, or so that we thought, but was actually taking money from her weekly grocery money. And then of course we have strangers that could be in the form of like a scammer, who might not know the older adult at all. Okay, so I've talked about why or how old reports of elder abuse do go mostly unreported. So elder abuse cases go unreported, and there's several reasons why that tends to be. We see a lot of cases where the abuser is a family member, and a lot of times our clients are very hesitant to report any kind of issue going on with their family member because it can put them in a pretty complicated situation. They might not want to be the reason that their son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter is arrested or goes to jail. Sometimes we see situations where that older adult is financially or even physically dependent on the caregiver or family member. So they might have the thoughts of, well, okay, if I report it, who is going to help take care of me? I don't want to end up in a nursing home. So who's going to be there to help take care of me? Or they might think, okay, if I report it and nothing happens, that might make the situation between me and my son or me and my daughter more difficult, and I might suffer the repercussions of that after nothing happens. Or they might not know who to tell or where they could turn or the right way to go about it. When I call the police, they might not even know that an agency like Adult Protective Services even exists. So all of those factors can play into why elder abuse largely goes unreported. But I feel like it is so important to continue to raise awareness surrounding elder abuse so people know the warning signs and know where they can turn to get help or to get a family member help. So in the next slide, I'm going to show a video that was actually provided to us by the National Center on Elder Abuse. I do want to just give a brief warning that it does depict a neglected older adult, but I think that it does a really good job of showing a collaborative response of multidisciplinary teams to work together to respond to specific cases of elder abuse. And I also just want to note that this clip is from a larger video that talks about a lot of different cases. So hopefully we can get the sound to work. Hold on.
Hey, Ashley, before we start the video, you've got another question.
Okay.
Are any risk factors more prominent than others when looking at causes of elder abuse?
I feel like one of the biggest risk factors is isolation and not having a watchful eye over what is going on. So if an older adult doesn't have like a caring party to kind of look over things just a little bit, they might get a scam letter in the mail and think, oh my gosh, I just won $3 million in the lottery, but all I need to pay is $1,000 for taxes and fees. And that might be like a situation that they quickly get involved in a scam situation. But if they have, more of those community supports kind of in their lives to maybe, throw out a red flag on something like that, then I think that they're more likely to be protected in that way. So I feel like isolation more than anything is probably the biggest risk factor.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and play our video now.
They've been called in by neighbors that Mrs. Smith was out on the street almost to the curb. She was in an adult disposable garment that was soiled. She was in what I classify as like a sports bra. They tried to first ask Mrs. Smith where she lived, who could they call to help her. Mrs. Smith wasn't able to give them that information. And so they did call for an ambulance to come and assist them to check her out and make sure, physically if she needed anything.
Okay, what? I didn't go through it, no. Sorry.
The patrol officers did what patrol officers do. They walked up to the home and they knocked on the door. At that time, the front door was open and it was a screen door.
Hello? Hello?
They could smell urine and feces and stale odor in the house. Eventually, a woman appeared.
Hi. I guess your mother was outside. She was not completely clothed, but she seemed a little disoriented. So we were wondering if you maybe come out and give us a hand.
She turned out to be Mrs. Smith's daughter.
We'd been screaming for somebody in the house. We were concerned that you or somebody else might be hurt in the house also, because your mother really couldn't tell us that much. She was very disoriented. She
said she had been in her bedroom, and she mentioned that she had an air conditioner running because of the smell inside the home.
Are you her caretaker?
Yes.
You are? Okay.
They check their egos at the door, and they check their emotions at the door.
I know it's tough. I've had my parents were stuck at home for years before they passed away.
They were just open and listened, and they took all these awesome notes, and they secured this place and really helped recreate this scene.
There you go. You're good to go. So she went to Suburban, okay? We're all set. Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Okay?
When I responded to the hospital, I noted that her toenails were not cut and groomed, and that's something that I regularly look for. They had dirt underneath of them, her fingernails also. Additionally, she also didn't have great cognitive function. We had conversation, but she wasn't able to answer my questions directly.
Similar to the Kirkland case, law enforcement involved us almost right away to talk about evidence collection and what would be needed to ultimately hold Mrs. Smith's daughter culpable for what she had done in terms of the neglect of her mother. Her mother ended up receiving care in the hospital and treatment and ultimately went to a nursing facility. And part of the probation conditions for the daughter was that she wasn't allowed to care for vulnerable adults or seniors ever, to protect her mom and to protect the community. We know that someone caring for an elderly parent or family member is not easy. That having been said, the choices in these two cases that these children made about the care of their parents or lack thereof resulted in horrible outcomes.
The Smith case is the very beginnings of what the Kirkland case became.
Had it not been for those patrol officers, their abuse would have continued with this woman. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
So I would encourage officers to write that initial report. And when they do, write in there everything that they see and they smell and they hear, because that could make the difference later on in the final prosecution.
Okay, so we can debrief on that video a little bit. And again, we can use the chat. I know that could be hard to see an older adult who has been, a depiction of an older adult who has been neglected. But I just want to kind of gauge what people are thinking after that video. What were some physical indicators in the home that the neglect was happening? People want to put in. Okay, so I saw the couple questions before that, and I can circle back to those towards the end of the presentation after we debrief on our video. But right, yes, clutter in the home, it was unclean. Yes, Beth said the bed sores. Are there any risk factors that might be evident for the person committing the abuse that you guys can think of? In thinking back of our societal factors, I think that maybe that caregiver doesn't have the proper resources that they need to properly take care of their loved one. They might be more isolated and not have the support needed to meet that task. What risk factors were evident for the older adult? Yeah, Chloe said the cognitive issues. Yes, Donna, and the caregiver might have some mental health issues herself. So yeah, those are all really great examples. What kind of systematic forces were at play? So the something that I think of are the lack of opportunities for older adults in the community may help lead to isolation, lack of resources again for the caregiver. Can anybody highlight what they felt went well in this intervention? Yes, the police remained calm, took great notes. At one point in the video, they talked about the neighbor who kind of saw what was happening, and the older adult was outside and knew to call the police. So yeah, difficult video to watch, but does a really good job of showing what a case of elder abuse might look like. Okay, so moving into interventions and keeping with our metaphor of our societal structure and our support beams for our clients, we will talk about what works best in responding to elder abuse cases. So some good examples that we have here throughout the state and in Nashville. A big one would be services all under one roof. So as you know, after someone experiences abuse and is seeking help, it is so valuable to have resources that are all under one roof, working in collaboration to provide assistance to the person who's seeking help. So we have the Family Safety Center here in Nashville, which has many community partners that hold office hours in their facility, where when somebody comes in, they can quickly be connected to those different resources. I know that looks really different, especially now because of the pandemic, but I know that all of those community partners are really working hard to continue to provide services to those who need it. Another big thing with that is, especially for older adults, transportation can be a big barrier for many people. And it is definitely one many older adults are affected by. So a one-stop shop like the Family Safety Center with community partners is extremely valuable in that sense. So another best practice in helping with these elder abuse cases are multidisciplinary teams. So in a similar vein, when professionals are working together, clients benefit from streamlined communication. So in Tennessee, which was a result of some 2017 legislation, we now have VAPIT teams throughout the state. And that stands for Vulnerable Adult Protective Investigative Teams. And that consists of individuals from police departments, the district attorney's offices, CREVA, and other service providers to collaboratively tackle these elder abuse cases, to prosecute them, but also provide that older adult with resources that they might need. In Tennessee, we also have the Tennessee Vulnerable Adult Coalition, which brings together efforts throughout the state to raise awareness and to provide resources for those in need. Here in Middle Tennessee, we have the Tennessee Elder Watch Committee, which is a local interdisciplinary team that grows out of TVAC's efforts. So if anybody is interested in joining that committee, I can send out more information for Chloe to send out after this presentation, or I'm happy to answer any questions about that committee. So we have caregiver interventions. I think that the video we just watched helps us see that the way the well-being of the caregiver is so connected to the well-being of older adults. We want to make sure that caregivers who are caring for our older adults feel supported in their work. We know that can be really overwhelming and really hard to do, rather than them feel disconnected or isolated from wider society. And it just makes me think back to the video and wonder if that caregiver had all the support and all the resources she needs, if that older adult would have been in that situation. And I feel like that it probably would have played out a little bit differently if she had those things. So the Tennessee Respite Coalition is a resource for caregivers that I give out a lot to just provide support and additional resources for people who are in that caregiving role. Also, the Council on Aging recently published a guide for families and caregivers that provides resources and guidance for those who are caring for an older loved one. I think I can share that link. Well, not right now. I'll have to send it out later. Sorry, I'm having trouble. And then a big gap in services that we see specifically here in Middle Tennessee, that is the best practice that there is definitely a need for, are emergency shelters for older adults. As we know, older adults have unique needs, maybe mentally or physically, and a lot of times a typical domestic violence shelter or a typical homeless shelter is not going to be the best environment for an older adult. They might need additional physical support if they have some movement issues, or they might need assistance with medications or things like that. We do know that there is a model in Knoxville called Samaritan Place that is tailored specifically to individuals who are 60 and older, but I know here in Middle Tennessee that is definitely still a gap in services that is very much needed. So reporting elder abuse. Sorry guys, I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a leaf blower right outside my office. So earlier we discussed how elder abuse is highly underreported. So it's so important to spread the information on how to report. I want to make sure that everybody knows that Tennessee is a mandatory reporting state. So that means that anybody who is aware of or has witnessed elder abuse in any way, they have a responsibility to report it. So there is Adult Protective Services and Metro's non-emergency line. That are two places that you can call. We are all responsible when it comes to the well-being and safety of older adults in our community. If the abuse is happening in the moment, obviously, if it's a life-threatening situation, you're going to want to call 911. But just understanding that it is Tennessee is a mandatory reporting state is something important to always remember. So talking a little bit about our program and the services that we provide. So Victory Over Crime is a intensive case management program that provides services to older adults that have been affected by crime in any way. So obviously we get involved with a lot of elder abuse cases. So we work really closely with older adults to get them connected to the resources that they need. If they have to go through the criminal justice system because of the crime, we help guide them through that. We try to give them the skills that they need to help prevent future victimization. So safety planning is something that we frequently get involved when we help them get order of protection in place if that's something that they need. General advocacy. Before the pandemic, we were helping a lot of our clients with transportation to, get to doctor's appointments if they were to have been injured as a result of the crime, or to get to court. That looks a little bit differently now, but it's still something that, we can work out to try to get that older adult what they need. So just a little bit of information about our program specifically. Our clients have to be residents of Davidson County, so just a criteria tidbit. So now we can shift into prevention. So this picture I absolutely love on the slide, which it just reminds me of happier times when we could all be together. But this is a picture of our center members from FiftyForward Bordeaux, and they are wearing purple to raise awareness for elder abuse, World Elder Abuse Awareness Day that takes place every year on June 15th. Okay, so I think we remember a similar slide towards the beginning of the presentation that talked about all of the societal factors that kind of play into cases of elder abuse. But this slide kind of goes over some of those structures that can help foster support for older adults. So, of course, raising awareness and education about prevention for older adults, families, and service providers, people who are on the front lines who might be able to catch instances of elder abuse. Policies that prioritize the well-being and older adults and caregivers. Something that has been seen to be very successful are intergenerational programs that provide opportunities for younger generations to engage with older adults, and that helps combat some of those negative stereotypes and feelings of ageism. So we can allow older adults to feel more included in larger society. And then, of course, age-friendly infrastructure that is accessible and innovative in combating isolation. So older adults can feel more connected in the community, and we have more eyes on older adults to help catch some of these things on the front end before they turn into really, lethal or dangerous situations. So in my last slide, I kind of wrap up the presentation with a video that kind of does a good job of explaining the whole structure metaphor that I've been referencing back to, and just generally gets me really jazzed about doing the work that I do and being able to provide a supportive program to older adults.
A just society works to make sure everyone is free from the threat of abuse at every stage of life. To live up to our ideal of justice for all, we need to work to address the social issue of elder abuse. It's important to understand what creates the risk of experiencing abuse or neglect as we age. A strong and just society is like a structure, supported by many beams. We need strong beams that are frequently maintained. You can think of these beams as the policies and programs that reinforce the relationships and resources needed for health, happiness, and safety. When those support beams are missing or not maintained, the structure is weaker and may not meet our expectations that people are able to live free from maltreatment. The first and most important step to prevent elder abuse is to reduce social isolation. George, age 77, reminds us why this is important. George spends most of his time at home alone since his wife died. His daughter lives too far away to visit regularly, and his neighborhood lacks reliable public transit and many age-friendly civic spaces. Fewer social interactions mean fewer opportunities for walking, talking, and laughing. And with these normal, healthy experiences missing, George's physical, cognitive, and emotional health have gotten worse. His daughter does not know what she can do or where she can turn for help. Without the structure of support, it's easy to see how if George encountered an unsafe situation, the problem might go unnoticed. George's story of social isolation is not uncommon. With millions of our
Sorry, guys.
fellow Americans living in similar situations, it's fair to say that our nation's social structure needs repair. Just as one beam alone can't support a building, individuals and family members alone can't single-handedly manage the problem of social isolation and the corresponding risk of maltreatment. The good news is that there are many ways to strengthen our social supports through policies, services, and programs that keep us integrated in our communities as we age. We can design and equip community centers to work as intergenerational spaces that allow older people to build relationships and participate in the work, play, and life of our neighborhoods. We can think about the role of transportation and reducing social isolation and adjust systems so that we can all continue to move throughout our communities as we age. We can figure out new and better ways to arrange and coordinate the teams, agencies, and programs that specifically work with older people. We can develop programs to educate families and professionals who work with older adults to understand the importance of preventing isolation, how to spot the warning signs of maltreatment, and what to do to address abuse or neglect. By doing all we can to strengthen the social support structure, we can reduce social isolation, protect communities and families against elder abuse, and build a nation that lives up to our promise of justice for all. Learn more and see how you can get involved in preventing elder abuse and promoting greater justice for older people at ncea.acl.gov.
So I love that video because it has a real call to action feel to it, which I feel is helpful in getting people engaged and wanting to do this type of work. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I need to go back to the chat and look at the couple that were given towards the middle. Hold on, let me find it.
I've got them right here, Ashley.
Okay, good.
The first one was, you may cover this towards the end, but if you do suspect elder abuse from a nursing home, what would be the first step to start an investigation?
So you can still call Adult Protective Services and make a report that way. Also, in nursing home settings, they have what are called long-term care ombudsmen, and they act as advocates provided through the state to act as advocates for the residents, and it is a state regulation that their contact information is posted in each nursing home facility, and their phone number can be located there, so that could be a good place to start as well.
Awesome. All right, and then the next one was, how often are charges of elder abuse successful?
So that is a really good question, and I don't know the specific number off the top of my head, but I do know that there have very recently been increased penalties for people who do commit elder abuse, and I know that it is an initiative that they are looking at to broaden the definition of what elder abuse is, so they can prosecute more cases that might fall underneath that new broadened definition. So I can figure out the numbers because it was in that comptroller's report that I mentioned earlier that was recently released. I'm sorry, and I can send that out to Chloe for her to send to all of you all if you guys are interested in it.
Good deal. Yes, just send me whatever so we can get that sent out.
Yeah.
And we have another one that came in. What's an example of an intergenerational program?
So I'm thinking of like any opportunity, like for example, at FiftyForward, we have an adult day service where people who might have some cognitive deficits can come and engage in activities throughout the day and also give some respite for some caregivers. So if we had a group of high school students come in and do activities with our adult day service clients, it just gives a perfect opportunity for them to be able to engage, especially for some of those teenagers that might not have a lot of experiences in working with older adults. They might have a really negative view or scary view, but providing more opportunities for different generations of people to engage, I feel like that breaks down some of those barriers. And that can help combat ageism and negative stereotypes.
Right, gotcha. And then Sherry popped into the chat and said friendship home. I'm not familiar with that. Sherry, do you want to pop in and talk to us about friendship home?
From what I understand with Friendship Home, and I'm not as involved with that as some of our other staff members at FiftyForward, but it provides, it's a housing development where younger people and older people cohabitate with each other and provide assistance to each other. So basically fostering that relationship and providing affordable housing as well.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, does anyone have any other questions or comments?
I do have a survey that Chloe can share if you guys don't mind filling it out. And you know, we are always happy, our program is always happy to give these presentations, especially now virtually because there aren't as many in-person opportunities. So if anybody's interested in having us give this presentation to their agency, please reach out and let us know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. I really appreciate you coming and doing this.
Thank you for everybody who joined. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, everybody. Y'all have a great day and a great weekend.
You too.
Bye.